So I had a tree trimmer come out and trim up one of these trees that is over the house. And I'll show you what's going on here in a bit. But he was just dropping it right on top of the house. So I'm gonna have to get up there and show you and do some inspection to see what he's damaged. So I thought I'd keep this kind of as a tree firewood video, because you know, you got to make a vlog. That's just how YouTube does things. Heard a noise the other day. Couldn't figure out what it was for the life of me. Now, the house is right here. I looked out the window, I looked all around, couldn't figure out what it is, but the firewood fell over. It's gonna fall over here too. You can see it leaning right here. What happens is the ground moves. When it freezes, it'll expand and contract. Well, we had several months of no rain, several weeks, month, couple months of no rain. All of a sudden it started raining again. So that just like in the winter, the ground expands and contracts. During that dry period, the ground was contracting, so it settled. And now that it's rained, it's expanding again. It's pushing all this firewood over. I've been testing, well, Carolyn's been testing, I should say. I really haven't done much testing. I did some testing, but she's done the bulk of the testing of all this firewood here. So we have this pile over here, a little distracted from all this limb dropping on the house. I just can't believe that dude, what his problem is. But over here we had, this is our mulch, so don't think this is all trash. Just anytime we split firewood, we split it here on the concrete. What it is when we cut our firewood, we cut it too big. We had that old Franklin wood stove down there as a heat exchanger, and so when we was cutting the firewood, we cut it to that size. Didn't know what size wood stove we'd have up here, so we just assumed that it would probably be about the same. But then when we got up here, this holds a lot smaller firewood, and we don't need as much firewood. It just heats up so well in here. So we bring it over here, we split it smaller because we need it smaller, and then we test it. So every piece comes in tested to make sure it's 20% moisture content or less. These new wood stoves, which I'm going to talk more about in September. So like I said, this is all the mulch. So when the bark falls off while we're splitting it, we put it in here and we can mulch it and make dirt. And we don't garden anymore, so don't really know what we're going to do with it. So all this stuff last year was too wet to burn. We come over, split it from the wood pile, and then we tested it. It was too wet. Well, now all this is dry. So then we bring it in the house and we let it dry for a couple weeks. Somebody said, I've been burning firewood for 20 years and you don't need to do that. Just build yourself a wood shed or cover it up with a strong tarp. People who've been burning firewood, I said this a while back, people who've been burning firewood for 20 years have not kept up with the technology. Technology has changed. These new wood stoves just won't burn wet firewood. That first year we were here, we tried it. And you just get creosote everywhere. It's hard to start. You can't keep it lit. When it's dry like this, 20% or less, no humidity, you can put it in the wood stove, light it. It'll lighten just like a matchstick. It burns. Then that wood stove holds that heat for hours, just hours, all those coals and everything. So I don't even relight it being in this tiny house to run wet firewood. So people are telling me, oh, I've been burning firewood for 20 years. I know what I'm talking about. Well, you're burning it with those old wood stoves and you got a creosote problem, I can assure you of that. I know my grandma used to burn wet firewood. That's just the way she believed back then. I have convinced my father, he burned wet firewood when I was a kid. I've convinced my father that, you know, in modern day wood stoves, look at this, you know, and the window on the wood stove would just get charred black when you're burning wet firewood. You burn dry firewood, it stays clean. Most of this winter, you just dust it off. I mean, it gets that little dust powder on it. So I've convinced my dad that things can change, technologies can change. So if you're burning firewood from 20 years ago, and that's the mentality you have, then you're just, it's not the way we do it anymore. So we got these trees next to this house here, and I want to keep them here. I know that it's pretty dangerous. They can fall over. They're deep rooted, they're good solid trees. And we got a third one here. Now we have all these trees over here too. Those are sycamore. Sycamore is so hard to split when it's wet. Don't even try it. If you're going to cut up a sycamore tree, just let it dry. It'll take forever to dry if you don't split it, but let it dry 6-8 months and then split it. It won't split. It's terrible. So it's like a spring. Now those cover the house quite nicely. We got a walnut over here, and we don't want to cut the walnut down because that's produces walnuts, and we're going to get quite a few walnuts this year. And notice that the walnuts only produce every other year. But it's these oak trees that I'm most concerned about. As you can see, we got limbs up over the tiny house here. So when I built the tiny house, I tried to get on the roof and I tried to cut some of those down, but I just didn't feel safe. It wasn't safe for me to do it, so I stopped doing it. But limbs are falling all the time. You can see this one's kind of dead. Over here, we got a limb that fell. And I don't even know if you're going to be able to see it, but it kind of V'd onto this one branch here. So, I mean, the limbs are starting to break off, and it's kind of risky. But I don't want to come down. So a couple of years ago, I noticed this tree here was becoming discolored. And it worried me at first because we got some oak trees around here. This is oak. That have, I forget what it's called, oak rot or something. I mean, it's a disease, and it spreads from tree to tree to tree. So there are 3, maybe 4 trees just in this little vicinity right up here that have died. So this tree had me concerned. I was afraid it was going to die. Now, the way they get this disease is through beetles and through the root system. So I guess it might be beetles that are doing it. Now, I know that tree over there, they pruned in the springtime. Bad mistake. Don't do it in the springtime. When you prune a tree, you want to do it in the fall. What happens is the beetles can find little holes in there because they want that food. Bugs are in it, and they want that food in there. And so they'll burrow into the wood. But if you do it in the fall, there's not as much moisture. It's not as much food in there, so they don't burrow in there. You can see here, a long time ago, somebody trimmed that branch up, or it broke, or whatever it was, and it's in bad shape. Then, of course, throughout time, people have done all kinds of crazy things to these trees. It makes it even more difficult. Somebody put a chain here, and the tree has grown around the chain. And then there's somebody must have hung a deer here years ago on this pulley, so that branch is dead. So just a little concerning, but overall, I think these trees look very healthy. See, there's a chain here too. So, I mean, even cutting in this tree is going to be a nightmare. And you're not going to find many people to actually cut these trees down because of that. They don't want to hit that with their chainsaw. Now, I have been practicing cutting trees. And I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it. I'm no expert. I'm still a novice. There's tons of things I can learn. Anytime I cut a tree, I watch about a dozen videos that I got saved. Husqvarna has this amazing video. So I can get it to lean right. And I did a pretty fancy trick down here. This is last spring. I was cutting a tree so we could get the camper in there. And I got a tree to basically turn as it fell. I thought that was cool. So I've always been a little concerned about this tree. So last, I guess 2 years ago, I started looking for a tree guy to come out and start trimming, and that was a nightmare. These guys, I just hate macho men. This is going to get off subject for a second, but it just kind of tell you, I wanted to buy a small caliper pistol. So I went over to this tree guy's place, and just trying to get him to talk to you was a nightmare. I called and called and called the phone number that was on the side of their trucks. Nobody ever answered. So I went over there and knocked on the door, and this receptionist comes out. And she says, give me a minute, I'll go get him. And he comes strolling out. How can I help you? You know, just arrogant. There's just all that ooze and arrogant manhood. And he didn't want to be bothered. And I said, hi, I've been trying to get a hold of you. Well, I'm a busy man, you know. I got a lot to do. I can't just stop everything and talk to you. I thought, well, I guess if you don't want business, that's fine. So he says, I said, I got some trees I'd like to get cut down or looked at or pruned up, something. I said, I think I got one dying. And I said, what would it cost me to get these 3 trees taken down? Well, I'd have to come look at it, don't you know? I can't, it could be anywhere from $1 to $10,000. How am I supposed to know? I said, okay, well, when can you come out? Well, where do you live? And I told him where I live. The next time I'm in that area, I'll look you up. And I said, you want my address? No, just give me a call when you're ready. I said, sir, I've been trying to call you for, and I said, you know what, never mind. I don't need your help. I've been real polite here, and you've been nothing but arrogant. You better watch yourself. I said, well, I'll just leave. So I left and never did anything more about it. Well, finally got a tree guy to come out here the other day. And he showed up, and I didn't even think he was big enough to pick up a chainsaw. I mean, this guy was puny, smaller than me. And he didn't even knock on the door or anything. He got here about 7:30. Started scaling the tree, went up there. And I heard something. I looked out and oh, look at that. And there he is right there. And he's up in the tree, and he didn't use a chainsaw. I'm not even really sure what he used. Maybe he used his teeth. And a few minutes later, I heard something again, came out and looked, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And he was dropping all these branches on the house. I mean, he about got it covered up. And I yelled at him, and he scurried off. And I thought, okay, that's about right. So, didn't see him for a little while. Well, that evening, he came back. I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock. It was late. And he started doing it again. And he was just, and he's not even really doing a great job. He's just taking off the ends. So this time I had a conversation with him. You can see right there. He's just kind of cutting up the ends. Everybody likes to see Skitty, so there's Skitty right there. She's hunting something. And I looked at him this time. I mean, I really got a good look at this guy. And he's about 6 inches long with a fluffy tail. And he barked just like a squirrel. Yes, I'm being a little silly. I couldn't figure it out. The squirrel, I know, sometimes I do that. I do these sarcastic videos, but I couldn't figure it out. Why is he dropping? I mean, he's cutting all this like he's covering up the porch roof. And he was trying to be very deliberate about it. He only missed a few. The rest of them fell right on the porch roof, like he doesn't like the porch roof. Carolyn said he's building a nest, so I thought, so it must be a female, but females usually, I thought, in the springtime. But I thought, well, if he's building a nest, I'll just leave it there and he can come collect it up later. But he hasn't been back. So I don't know what he's doing. I'll give it another week or so. If he doesn't get them, I'll just sweep them off. So no terrible damage. It was just, I couldn't figure out what it was. So if you click this up next video, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about generators. So if I can inspire you to interview your tree trimming service so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.